Good evening. Uh-oh.
Hi there, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All I hear is music. Am I in the wrong link or?
You're at the right link.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And who am I speaking with? I see. Who's there?
This is Miza.
Oh, Misa. Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you for asking.
Great. So what's the next step? Are we able to? Are all the participants on the line?
Currently, we have Mr. Femi and Ling inside.
Hi.
Hi, Miza. Hi, Doug. I'm here.
Hi,
I don't know
everyone.
if you can see me there.
Oh, great. Hello, everybody. Let's see.
Hi, it's Doug.
Oh, and do I call you Olufemi? Olufemi Hassan. I've seen you
Yeah,
called.
you can call me Olufemi.
Say it again.
Yeah, you can call me Femi, or you can ask for shots if that's easier.
Okay. And I see Nazri. I recognize Nazri. How are you?
You're looking good.
You're looking better. Thank you. And you're looking great for 10 p.m.
That's my second shift.
Yeah, you've got the late shift and I've got the early shift on this side.
And that's Poling's bedtime, by the way. I've got to beg her, I've got to kneel before her to contribute to this discussion.
Hey, don't say like that. It's my honor to be here. Thank you for inviting.
It sounds like you guys know each other very well. That's good.
Okay, guys, and Poling, Doug is a legend, okay, when it comes to networking, when it comes to marketing strategies, when it comes to international business, he's a legend, okay?
Wow.
That is an understatement. I've seen
You
him
must learn from him.
Yeah, one of my partners, right, went over to Arizona, Phoenix, met up with him more than, 8 years ago or something? And the relationship and friendship blossomed since then. And I see him grow with metros. How many metros you are at in now, Doug? 700 plus, right?
525.
525, okay. 525 metros, you know.
Yeah.
All over
Wow.
the world. Yeah. How many
Well
countries?
done, Doug.
How many countries?
We have a decent participation in KL because of the relationship we have both with MIDA and Matre. So both of those are members and we work with them. In fact, the guy in the US for MIDA, he went back to KL just in the last few months. So we're working on building up our chapter in KL. Because Ling, you're there, right? Are you in Kuala Lumpur?
Yes, I'm at Kuala Lumpur. I saw your website, so maybe I can get to know your chamber in KL better one day.
No, that would be great. Looking forward to it. And then we've got let's see, who else do we have? So Zagros. Oh, are these people who are attendees that are on the line, or?
Zagros is part of our
He's
team.
address from MyFinB.
Oh, from MyFinB, I see. Okay, got it. So in terms of kind of like the program itself, Nazri, are we pretty much set then? Are you okay with starting off, and then we go through the speakers from Femi to Ling to Ipeleng? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Ipeleng.
Yeah, polling.
Hi, hi, hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Ipeleng.
Hello, Ipeleng, wherever you are. Let's see, where are you?
He's in South Africa.
South Africa. Which city?
Johannesburg.
Oh, that's, I guess, Johannesburg. So that's good. Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah.
Jayberg for Ipeleng. And then Raj, are you on the line? Raj Muppala? Oh, my phone is, somebody's phone is ringing. So hopefully Raj will join us. And I'll keep aware of emails in case anybody like, Raj, if you're on the line, let us know, or you're muted. So what other guidance do you have, Nazri, in terms of getting going?
What, sorry?
With what?
You were saying in terms guidance in terms of? Sorry, I didn't catch your last few words. Doc, are you there, Doc?
I am.
Oh, okay. So I just got the host to pause the music for a while. Could you?
Okay.
You were saying something towards the last few words there. I missed it. I missed them.
Well, we're going to get started here in a few minutes. I just wanted to make sure that the agenda looks okay and you're okay with kicking off, and anything else that you want to give us in terms of guidance, all of us, while you have us.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure that everybody's audio and visual are okay. We didn't have much testing earlier on. So if the panelists could give a shout, that would be a good start. Do we have Raj there? Yeah, right now? Raj, are you there?
Right.
Hi, it's Raj. Sorry, I got, can you hear me?
There he
Yes,
is.
loud and clear. Could everybody on their video so that we can take a look at everyone's faces?
Okay, Femi is here. Can you see? Can you, Femi, Hassan here.
Okay,
From
fine.
Lagos.
Let me see.
Nazri, can you hear me?
All right, I can see, but there's a signal, there's a message that says your network bandwidth is low. So just got to be prepared for some intermittent information being shared.
Oh, I see. But can you see me though? Can you see me?
I can't, unfortunately. Can anybody see Femi?
No,
Maybe
your camera looks like it's pointed down, Femi. It looks like it's.
What about now?
Oh, there you go. That's a much better view. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. So we have Femi
Thank you.
from Nigeria, Ling from Malaysia, myself from Singapore, and Raj from UK, right?
Yeah, from London, yeah.
Okay, from London. So we have quite an international diversified panel, Doug. Thanks to your network and thanks to the panelists here who have extended or lent their time for us as one of the 4 episodes that we are working together.
Yeah, I'm real pleased that all of you are participating today. Looking forward to a great conversation. If you can take your, it looks like we have 8 minutes for Nazri and then 5 minutes each for Femi and Ling, Ipeleng, and Raj.
Yeah.
And so if you could take your topic and be as succinct as possible, I know you've got a lot to cover in 5 minutes, but if you can keep it to the time and police yourself to that would help us, because then we'll have time for questions. So we'll encourage people to ask questions in the box. And so the last 30 to 45 minutes, we probably go over the hour, will be for questions. And so we're looking forward to a good conversation. Any questions before we get started?
Just a quick one then. Is it possible to share something while we're talking, or is it only talking?
Yeah, I think you can share it yourself, right? You guys have it set up that way, or can anybody from MyFinB help?
Actually, when I click that, it said host disabled participant screen sharing. I think I can't see that, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Misa, can you please enable all
Okay.
panelists to be able to share their screen or share their
Okay.
slide? Yeah.
That would be great. So if Cesar, if you're, Cesar, are you on the line by any chance? Oh, maybe not allowed to speak, I don't know. But Cesar, if you're on the line, if you could take a picture of everybody and we'll get going here in a few minutes. So everybody say kimchi, kimchi.
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 There you go. And then we'll get going in whenever Misa, you say go, we'll go.
thank you guys. Shall we be on mute then, or?
Okay.
Probably mute if you're not talking, that would be best. Yeah.
Okay. I guess in the next few minutes, we are expecting more participants to join in, especially from Asia, considering that 10 p.m. In Singapore and KL. But we're not too worried because we are live on various platforms. So Doug, over to you, and we can start the session proper. And we would love from all of us to have Doug speak, and share a couple of nuggets of wisdom with us as we go along. Yeah, appreciate it.
I really appreciate that, Nazri. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. We really appreciate you taking the time, especially those of you in Asia that are very, very late. It's only 7 a.m. here on the west coast of the US, so we have it very easy relative to you. So thank you for taking the time. As you've already seen, we've got an amazing panel of speakers and experts that we have talking today about the main topic of scale or fail. This is a topic of growing companies that's always been of high importance. And now with new technologies available, we've got all sorts of tools that can be used to be able to value the company that the banks are using, for you as management of your company to accelerate the growth, to connect up with new opportunities. There's all sorts of great ways for you to scale ideally and not fail. And so the conversation today is all about ideally having you be more clever and be a lot smarter around scaling your company. And so I can't think of anybody better to kick off this session than Nazri Mood, who's a serial entrepreneur. He's going to be sharing information about the DNA of unicorns, what makes them tick, what are some of the secrets and things that they have. He's going to talk about how they've scaled. He'll chat about tips for SMEs, and he's going to share a case study as well. And so Nazri, we're really honored to have you here today to allow you to share some words of wisdom.
Thank you, Doug. Once again, we're privileged to have you as our moderator, and we look forward to your guidance as we go through all the complicated topics that we're going to share, right? And basically, my topic today is about how we use AI to uncover the DNA of unicorns. There are many ways for us to learn from business leaders, right? You attend the seminars, you attend the workshops, right? And you basically get consultancy help, you attend training. What we do differently, at my part at least, is to complement what the experts are doing by unraveling, or rather revealing what constitutes the common business strategies adopted by unicorn business leaders. So the first part of my presentation and the 8 minutes would be the COVID scenarios and what implications this has on businesses, whether you are pursuing organic or non-organic strategies, how much funds to raise, what sort of risks are you expected to face. Part 2 will be on the common DNA of unicorns. We identified 9 unicorns out of hundreds of them. We studied their P&L balance sheets, news releases, news announcements, etc., and find out what are the things that are common amongst them. and what we can learn from them. So there are different aspects that we can learn: financial, business, and leadership. For purposes of this particular session, because it's quite a short session, we'll talk about the business strategies that they pursued pre and post-COVID. Part 3 will be how we're going to contextualize a local company that wants to go through, that is going through restructuring process, okay, in the COVID era, and what they could do by extracting some of the strategies. So this is actually a real company, but we blank out the name, particularly in the steel industry, for example, okay, as a start. And that will be the fourth part of the session. Okay, so there are 3 scenarios that could happen right now. So scenario 1 is where you have a very much, peaks and troughs of the outbreak of the pandemic, right? So you have peaks and troughs, meaning that they will reach a new high and a new low, new low repetitively throughout the year. It becomes so more predictable, but it has its highs and lows. Scenario 2 is where things that we didn't expect, Murphy's Law, will happen in a large manner that we've never expected before it settles down, it simmers down and to a manageable scale. And the third scenario will be where everything is so normalized, everything is very, very small outbreaks, controllable, manageable. So how would this impact strategies, for example? So if you have enough coffers, right, to last you for the next 6-8 months, that will mean that scenario 3 is very predictable for you, and you basically have to endure the first peak, and then the rest of it is just about recovery. So scenario 3 is something that's of the least of all evils, right? And scenario 1 would be situations where you have to prepare your reserves at each peaks and troughs. Every 3 to 6 months, you will see that surge, and then you see the bottoming out before it goes up and down again. Very volatile environment. So your strategies got to be very nimble. You cannot stick to one plan all the time. Every 6 months, your plans could go through some form of revision or refinement or pivoting going on. And then, of course, the second scenario is where whatever you plan for would not be enough, would not be adequate to address the peaks that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, right? And to understand how unicorns and business leaders develop their strategies, you can imagine putting them all in a living room, and then you use artificial intelligence and you plow through 10 years of their financial, business, journals, interviews, comments, right? And what will be the set of common factors that you get out of them? Of course, in our previous posters, we talked about Elon versus Jack, right? Very different, very polarized style, but yet between them, there are common strategies, common leadership traits, and common personality that they can identify with each other. Of course, we looked at guys like Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Reed Hastings from Netflix, Howard Schultz from Starbucks, even multiple sectors like Walmart, right, are being analyzed to find out how we basically uncover their similarities and differences. So how do we do that? We look at the quantitative and qualitative data over a period of time. We use something called natural language generation, go through the 5 levels, and then the machine basically maps out their DNA, financial DNA, business DNA, as well as leadership DNA. And out of the 3 components, right, leadership, financial, and business strategies, for this session, we can only focus on business strategies. And you can see that there are 12 common attributes that are commonly applied across all the industry unicorn leaders. Okay, you see very quickly, they adopt digital, they create customer loyalty programs that bring them closer to their customers. They do a lot of acquisitions or M&A, which some of my panelists will be able to share more. Right, they use a lot of big data that links to the digital part. They go global, they acquire channels, they create personalized services for their customers, and they basically create a huge community in the hundreds of millions to build and apply their business model across the board. And more importantly is that they also have private labels. Their branding, sense of branding is very, very strong. So for any SMEs or SMBs or even corporates that want to identify what would be the strategies that are top priorities in them. So we rely on AI to pull out all these common structured and unstructured data. Of course, like I said, there's a financial part. You'll discover that if you bring the financial element, you discover that a lot of them have taken on very, very high liability structure, right, in favor of higher sales. So they scale a lot by taking a lot of debt relative to the equity, right, to achieve all this, plus a set of personality that you'll see very unsatisfied with status quo. They will challenge status quo. They are not normal. They are very extraordinary business people, which we can learn from. Okay, so at this stage, I would like to introduce a 3-minute clip that's still within range, I hope, that basically gives rise to Jim, the robo-analyst, that talks about a particular local company. Using AI, we analyze the text and quality data, and using the audio, it basically merges with the engine to describe what happened under 3 minutes. Can we go ahead with this, please?
Just like many others that have been affected by the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it
Make it louder, please. Thanks.
build strategy, what should it start with, and where should it begin? If you are the business owner of a company that faces certain financial issues, what are the steps that you should consider? Artificial intelligence technology was deployed to review the case involving a 19-year-old company involved in processing, trading, distributing, and exporting of a wide range of steel products in South Africa. The company supplies hot roll, cold roll, galvanized value zinc plate, light and medium mill sections, tubing, and structural steel sections. From a broader view, we must bring to attention that there are several key issues faced by the steel industry players. Firstly, the steel production in South Africa decreased to 3,000 tons in April from 300,000 tons in March of 2020. Secondly, the decrease in manufacturing production figures for the month of February 2020 deals a further blow to metals and engineering. Monday, companies already operating under duress from the COVID-19 pandemic and a struggling economy. Third, the poor performance compounds a multiplicity of challenges faced by local businesses in the diverse Monday subsectors, including a distortion of supply chains and the recent credit ratings downgrade by Moody's. Back to the company in question. After AI reviewed its financials and the industry dynamics, it is evident that the firm continues to scale back from its expansion due to weakening demand of its products and services from the lower sales and profit growth experienced in the 2016-17 period. Its overall financial health was above average, but some form of weakness emerged from its profit decline. Going into 2020 and 2021, South Africa steel production economy would have slowed and impeded their trajectory further. Three top issues they face.
In order to supplement the volume that Jim basically speaks, what Jim attempts to explain is it went through all the financials and business statements, the industry dynamics, economy, and then makes an assertion about the financial health of the company, and then recommend out of a 20-page report analysis developed by the AI. It talks about how they should eliminate poor sales product lines. They should do a thorough marketplace competitive analysis, and how structural and cyclical effects of the business that they face, the industry that they face, they have to resort to what you call a horizontal expansion. That means they have to diversify across out of their core business. And they have certainly a high concentration of single customers or few customers that contribute highly to their sales. And then they had to do a lot of review of their pricing. So this is a case of a company that is structurally going through a lot of pressure and have to remodel their business. And in order, before they can even do the scale strategy, they have to reorganize and restructure their financials, their balance sheets, and their existing business model before they can pivot to the next level. That was the message that Jim was trying to explain, and going through what you call evidence, facts, as well as the dynamics that's happening right now. This is actually my last slide, and what I want to share consequently is basically the use of AI can basically help you to decipher information, as well as the dynamics that comes out of the information, and time the strategies that needs to be implemented, which my distinguished panelists will be able to share based on their respective experience and expertise, right? So can I have my last, summary, key takeaways? I think that's a key takeaway. Yeah. So in short, we believe that technology is a very important aspect to do restructuring, to do pivoting, and to then install any form of digital transformation in that order. So you can't digitally transform yourself if you have not done any restructuring or financial, restructuring at your end? And that depends on the three scenarios that you are faced with, right? And like I said, before pivoting or scaling can take place, restoration and rebuilding the fundamentals are a key part to identify pain points, new opportunities, and chart future growth. With that, I'll pass over to you, Doug. Thank you very much. You got to unmute. Thanks.
Thank you. First time I've ever done this, so I'm joking. I appreciate the input and the information you just shared. Nazri is the founder and CEO of MyFinB Group, and could you, before we move on to the next speaker, could you just take 30 seconds and tell the audience more about what you guys do? What is MyFinB and how do you help people through artificial intelligence?
Yeah, basically, in the context of scale or fail, MyFinB is involved in helping businesses, public listed companies, non-profit bodies, as well as small medium enterprises or small medium businesses, as what the North American counterparts would say, right? To basically identify key pain points, looking at financial, non-financial factors, automatically generating customized roadmaps, because not every company is the same. They belong to different industry, different stages of the life cycle, and basically require different intervention measures. So AI can be used to customize the solutions to determine the value of their business, their gaps, the SWOT analysis, as well as restructuring or rebuilding work for them. That's what we do. Yeah.
Fantastic. And for our Global Chamber audience, I've known Nazri for, I think he mentioned, at least 8 years, as they've looked at the US market prior to Global Chamber. And then subsequently, we founded Global Chamber 5 years ago. And MyFinB has been around for how long, Nazri?
As a product, it exists for 14 years. As a company, it existed for about four years or so. Around the same age as Global Chamber, I guess. 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I was fortunate to see some of the early iterations of the product and the approach way before the word fintech, I think, was even known. We knew each other. So I have so much admiration for you and what you're doing. In terms of Global Chamber, we launched 5 years ago. I'm the founder and CEO, Doug Bruhnke, and it's really my honor to not just work with Nazri, but now introduce several speakers who are going to take us on a journey into different aspects of how technology is used to be able to value companies, to be able to grow companies, and for you to be more effective in growing your company. So our next speaker is Olufemi Hassan, and he's asked to be called Femi, so that's what I'll do. He's based out of Nigeria. He's going to be talking about how banks look at small and medium-sized businesses and how to make yourself and your company more bankable using technologies that are available today. So Femi, thank you so much for sharing. Please go ahead. And you might have to unmute as well.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you for having me. And I hope everybody's, yeah, I'm already, you can hear me.
No, we're getting a little, we've got a little bit of a Wi-Fi thing going on there.
Can you hear me, Doug?
Can hear you now, yep. But can't hear you now. So we might have to switch to another speaker while we get those Wi-Fi issues fixed up, if that's okay, Femi. So we can't, you're breaking up, so there's a probably a Wi-Fi challenge on your end. So if we could go to the next speaker, apologize to everybody, and Femi will get right back to you as soon as we can. Give us a signal that you're available.
Doug, are you there?
Oh, we can hear you now, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I think it was just some technical itch. Yeah, just
okay.
We're talking about technology scale up and all that. Okay, thank you everyone for
yes.
Thank you for having me. And like I said earlier, I hope everybody is keeping safe Yeah, my name is Olufemi Hassan, Principal Consultant, Hatytude Consultancy Services, Nigeria. So like Doug said, I'll be talking about how SMEs can actually make themselves more bankable. I think it was IFC that stated that about 96% of SME of the Nigerian economy is actually powered by SMEs. And I think that's also similar across most of the nations of the world. SMEs are very essential in powering the economy. However, most SMEs seem to have some shortcomings in terms of capacity, and you find out that they find it a bit, they struggle a little bit in trying to get access to funding, either from commercial banks, the DFIs, or even from institutional investors. Like Nazri mentioned earlier on, the unicorns leverage on nimble strategies. These strategies are reviewed every now and then, sometimes every 6 months, sometimes every year. And they also leverage on technology, you understand? Because every client out there, they're looking for ways to do things in a more convenient way. They're looking for faster ways, easier, and of course, cheaper. So the strategies are entirely different. Is to actually and invest there. And what do we SME point out here? The last have been part of the bank that are very keen on is the fact that businesses, SMEs, must have clear-cut cash flow that clearly defines the inflows and the outflows, and they're able to see the net flows and what is available for the SMEs to actually pay loans or pay dividends when they are actually when they're actually funded. It's important to know that most SMEs actually leverage on, focus on profitability. But beyond profitability, you need to also focus more on cash flows. So to be bankable, you need to look at your figures. Banks, lenders, investors, they always focus on the financials. They look at your liquidity ratios, they look at your probability ratios, they also look at your leverage. How geared are you? If you already have so much in terms of debt, if your debt to equity ratio is too high, the tendency is that an institutional investor or a lender will be a bit wary about that. So you need to have all these on that check. You understand? There must also be a clearly mapped out business plan. Maybe so they've seen some other companies doing the same type of business and they're doing well. You don't have a clearly defined business plan which talks about your short-term, your medium-term plans, and your long-term plans. These are very essential for you to be bankable. You understand? You need to also ensure that you clearly identify your unique value proposition. When the bank sees that, okay, you have this, they are actually more endeared and comfortable to actually give you the required funding. Investors are willing to invest. And when you have such a situation, that is when you can actually be able to scale up. You understand? It is also important that lenders, institutional investors are also concerned about the capacity of the managers who are managing the business, the owners of the businesses, what is their experience, what is their knowledge, how knowledgeable are they in that business, what their experience like, you understand? Of course, there has to be compliance with legal issues, you understand, your tax compliance and all that. These are traditional things that makes you bank ever beyond all this. There are also some business intelligence solutions that businesses can gather, can make use of to actually make them bankable, make them more attractive, and of course, get them to attract the required funding that will enable them to scale up. Today, data, as we all know, is very key. However, most SMEs are able to gather data, but in terms of interpreting the data, or analyzing the data, there seems to be some shortcomings. That is where the likes of MyFinB comes to play, and the likes of Hatytude Consulting. We're able to help you look at your businesses, look at the workflow, look at the various operations, look at the various stages of the business, and see the ones that need to be transformed, leveraging on digitalization, innovations, and some other business intelligence tools to actually ensure that you can actually transform your business, leveraging on technology. This is a way that makes this a strategy that ensures that investors are readily attractive and makes you really attractive to investors, and investors are ready to actually give you funding. It's also important to know that angel investors and venture capitalists typically would want to invest in companies, but they will want to invest in companies that are the risk have been clearly assessed and deemed to be something that they have appetite for. So it's important for SMEs to, at every point in time, review their risk, evaluate, and ensure that you are you are compatible in terms of what the market is looking at. It's also important that you need to always compare yourself with competitors, look at what is happening. Business Solutions will help you check the trends in your performances, will help your performances compared to the industry averages. Also, it will help you find out what your customers actually want. Some of these things you would need to get them by leveraging on technological solutions that artificial intelligence and some other machine learning tools are able to provide. So it's important that SMEs leverage on these strategies that I mentioned at this point to actually make sure that they are actually ideally bankable for investors to look at. I would like to stop at this, and then if there's another opportunity, I can also shed some more light. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Femi, Principal Consultant and Hatytude Consulting Services in Nigeria. So really appreciate that perspective, at least the beginning of conversation. So each one of our speakers are experts on their topics. And so what I recommend is that you save up your questions or ask your questions in the Q&A time, and we'll be able to cover those at the end. We have 3 more speakers. The next one being Ling Tan. She's the managing partner at Total International Associates. She's going to be talking about strategies around financing and options around financing, and she's also going to share case studies. So Ling, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today, calling in, zooming in from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, though, for the introduction. Yeah, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to all that's inside this Zoom meeting now. This topic is rather very interesting. How SME can scale, or if they don't scale, they will fail, right? So a lot of SMEs are very family-owned, and they are very, very conservative in Asia especially. And a lot of them are, you know, maybe inherited the business from grandfather, father, and so on. So before we scale these SMEs, we would like to ask, what is their end game? Are they going to go for public offerings, or are they going to sell to a larger corporations that has worldwide network, or what is their end game before we can provide the right funding solution for them? Like Femi has just pointed out, where he is more into the banking side, where they can borrow money from the banks. Okay, I think we also have to look at the funding options available for SMEs. Like how deep is the owner's pocket? How far are they going to fund the business to grow to the next level? Okay, are they willing to bring in new investors into the company? Are they willing to consider investors like angels? Because there will be many things to consider. They may lose some controls and so on. And the investors also would like to look at the ROI, the return on investments. What is the time frame for them to get back their capital? So all this needs to be considered. And when you talk about bank borrowings, how will that stretch the gearing of the company? How will that improve the cash flow if they borrow, let's say, X 100 million from the bank? What is the the interest rate? How will it cost the company? Are they willing to repay? You know, at the end of the day, cash is king, right? So the more cash you can save and generate, the better your business will be, you know. And what sort of business strategies SME would need? There's no one strategy that can fit to all SME businesses. For example, I have advised a wholesale electrical company in Malaysia. They just started from two brothers invested in this business. From a partnership, they have grown up to a big company, and one of the brother has even failed out because they don't trust each other anymore. Family fight because of who wants to control the company. So it's very interesting to see the leadership of these SMEs, where they want to bring the company to, and are they willing to invest more in technology? How can technology improve the efficiency of these SMEs? And how can technology improve their go-to marketplace? And what are the right human capital that they can invest in? You see, it's very unique in Asia, the culture. Even in Malaysia or Singapore, the culture is very different. Likewise, if you go to other places like Indonesia, it's even more different than in Malaysia. So we would need to consider all these things when we want to upscale our marketing plan and all that. So that's why we think technology adoption is very, very important. Now that with COVID-19, everybody is forced to relook at their business model. How do they strategize to go to the next level? Are they still viable doing the physical shops, or they can have their products at more marketplace via e-commerce and online and all that? So all these need to be considered. So we would want to look at each case by case basis to see which are the best funding option available for them, and what sort of technology adoption they must embark on, and also what are the human capital they have to embark onto all this journey of upscaling, and are they agile enough to adapt to the market needs? Are they able to compete in the market that is very, very low margin? Or what is the business strategy, the unique selling point, like what Femi has mentioned? So that's my thoughts about the SME market in the Asia, in this part of the world. So I think that's my sharing. Later we can share more during the Q&A sessions. Thank you. Back to you, Doug.
Thank you, Ling. One of my takeaways in that was we're talking about technology, but so many issues relate to the human factor, and the factor of the brothers that you talked about, how one dumped out. I was in a meeting once, and two brothers took over a business for their father who passed away, and one of the brothers threw something at the other one, like they were so angry with each other. They were, and I couldn't have imagined anything ever happening like that, whether it was in a family or whether it was in a business. So you know, those of us involved with technology know that at the end of the day, we also have to deal with the human element, and these are human elements that are worldwide. You know, the more we do international business, the more we know that what happens in Malaysia happens in the UK, happens in Nigeria, happens in the US, and happens everywhere around the world. Yes. Very common challenges. So thank you for sharing, and keep sending in your questions, and we'll get to them as Ling mentioned.
Yeah.
So the next speaker is Ipeleng Selele. She's works at RRS Trade and Investment. She's the head group CEO of that organization. She's based out of Johannesburg, South Africa. So I'm really happy that we've got so much of the world represented. Ipeleng is going to be speaking about strategies that work for small businesses, and also some strategies that don't work. So she's going to point out some things that she's seen that haven't been as successful, and she's going to be sharing some case studies as well. So Ipeleng, thank you so much for sharing today. Very much appreciate it. Oh, are you on mute?
Thank you, Doug. Can you hear me now?
We can. The most common question in Zoom is, are you on mute, right? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to be able to present to the audience. I think I'd like to keep my contribution or intervention to a much practical, to keep it at a very practical level, and probably share some of the learnings that we have been experiencing in South Africa based on the impact of COVID towards our economy. particularly within the SMME space. And as a result, just to touch a little bit on the measures and strategies that I think that SMMEs can adopt. I think what we all agree on, Doug, is that the logical pattern of thinking is no longer applicable anymore. I think we are now going through, I mean, in these uncertain times, we can't really rush into answers. And it's quite interesting to observe how the world, for the first time, nobody has got the answer as to what things look like or what they're going to look like, because I think we're still going to go through quite a hard time. Now, what I think we're going through now is just reproductive versus productive thinking. So I think for the SMMEs in particular, we have to focus more on productive thinking, because COVID has taught us, and I think it has taught us to really look at new ways of thinking and many different ways to solve a problem. And as a result, it's important that when people adopt strategies, particularly within SMMEs, we can just look at a realistic view of what your position is, look at your market and look at the dynamics of your country. And in South Africa, I'm going to use just very practical examples to say, although the government has introduced a few stimulus packages, which has been great, you've got solidarity funds, you've got grants, you've got loans that has been dedicated towards SMMEs. What has happened, or rather what COVID has exposed, is that SMME, by definition of being a micro entity, a lot of our SMMEs don't have the collateral that the banks are looking for. And the banks come, and the banks have been assessing SMMEs same as big companies. So the learnings that we have actually experienced as a country is that you cannot assess an SMME the same as the big companies. And I think when I talk about the logical pattern of thinking, I also talk about the strategies of the big companies, particularly the banks. And I'm going to refer to some of the developmental funds did not have SMME divisions before. And as a result, the manner in which a transaction that comes from an SMME versus the one that comes from a big company like a multi-million or billion entity has been assessed in the same manner. And we can no longer carry on like that. Now, a few measures which I'd like to really probably comment on is that SMMEs must just be realistic, because I think COVID has given take stock. And by that, I mean that it's because we continue to talk about strategy as if it's usual. It's no longer strategy as usual. And as a result, a key things, SMMEs will have to be bolder and faster, because it's important that in this extreme uncertain times, you have to be decisive. You have to be decisive, decide what you want, be bold, and you have to be fast. And the other thing is, perfection is the enemy of good. Because I think coming from the business schools that you all come from, we've been taught to think in a certain way. As a result, you spend so much time trying to perfect your strategy, when actually you can just try to be as bold, as decisive, as fast as possible, and instead of rather be almost right than trying to be perfect. And then get to a rough answer than just trying to be, and then after you get the right answer, you can just probably with granular movement try and build on that. And then flexibility is going to be quite an important thing to say, decisions will need to change, work will be lost, but most importantly, ignore sunk costs in some instances. So what this really talks about is that we're going to have to be quite simplistic in our thinking and do away with the big talk, big expectations, because we're operating in a very abnormal environment, and it's going to be like that for many, many months to come. So I think the key thing which interests me, and based on observation, obviously also running a few SMMEs myself, mental stability is a big thing in terms of trying to say to SMMEs, let us take cognizance of the fact that, again, you've referred to it, we're dealing with human beings here. So it's going to be critical that mental stability strategies within our companies are important, because you rock up at work or you have a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting with your team, forgetting that some of your workers might have lost relatives the day before. Some of your workers are mothers, and there are mothers who are looking after these children. Because you are looking after these children, the e-learning or rather homeschooling has been imposed on us as mothers. So you've got to be cognizant of that, and probably try and balance between the usual way of strategizing, but also being a little bit more empathetic because of the realistic issues that SMMEs faced. And I mean, I'll probably refer a lot more to mothers and women who are running businesses where you have to balance. I mean, how do you have homeschooling and you've got 3 small kids and you still have to continue? So it's something that we have to be cognizant of. And then also it's important that you lead with conviction and compassion, because you engage with at a human level, and people are very anxious, people are very worried. So what are the strategies that your company as an SMME also can take care of that or deal with that? And it's important, obviously, for us to manage our cash flows, where you conserve your cash, you have to cut costs, but most importantly, just ensure that you've got adequate lines of credit. And most importantly, I think communication is going to be very important, because all of us are going to have to be responsible, very transparent and open about the realities that we're faced with, without trying to impress the world. Because I think we've come out of an interesting era, but where we are now, things are different. And I think what's going to be important also for SMMEs is that just collaboration is going to be important, where for the first time you have to reach out to some of your competitors to be able to share the work or to be able to bid for some of the work with some of the competitors. So collaboration in terms of sharing the work and knowledge is going to be quite critical for SMMEs to learn to do without looking at each other like your competitors. And I think obviously, which is also most important, is let us just use the time and the period that we're in to also upskill, where you learn a new skill. And as you upskill, we understand that your single best asset is really you, the owners of SMMEs. So repurposing is also one of the strategies that we are seeing from the SMMEs that are trying to adapt and survive, to be resilient. They are repurposing their businesses. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll take a couple of questions to be able to share more practical things that have been happening in the South African soil. But we have learned a lot. I mean, as one example is one of the solidarity funds has sort of shifted from giving away incentives, from trying to put in a seed and teach SMMEs to use that seed to sustain their businesses, instead of just creating a culture where you continue to give and give, because the government has introduced a lot of stimulus packages. And then the other issue with regards to data, which is why MyFinB is important to us, is that again in South Africa we've sort of woken up to the realities, particularly the banks. The collateral that they ask for, a lot of the small SMMEs don't even have financial statements. They've got no financial statements now. If you come and try and impose something that just doesn't work in South Africa, particularly when you understand our poverty levels and how you describe a small micro enterprise, it's going to be critical that we improve on how we manage our data. So artificial intelligence is going to be critical in helping us to get through this period. I'll leave it at that.
No question. That is absolutely the case. And keep the questions coming in. Really good information, Ipeleng. Thank you very much. One thing I'd like all the panelists to be thinking about is, where does an SME start? Where does the owner start? There's Ipeleng, you talked about new thinking. Well, all of us have our own thinking, right? It's already in our head. And so to start thinking differently creates something. Something has to create that. So what are some of your recommendations that to get people to be thinking on a different level, given the scale of what we're facing? So that'll be one of the questions that we'll cover after our next speaker. And Ipeleng, you created a great bridge to our next speaker, Raj Muppala, who's the CEO and founder of AInfinity. He's based out of London, and they actually have some of the tools that you talked about relative to using artificial intelligence to help support the growth of a business. So some of these things that he's doing involved with their clients are helping them get through and create new realities. So Raj, thank you for sharing today. Appreciate it.
So hi everyone, thank you Doug, and thank you Nazri and everyone, all the fellow speakers here. I think it's really amazing to hear from the SMEs perspective. I think especially Ipeleng and also Ling for sure, because to have that perspective from Asia, from Africa, is really important for us to understand how big the effect we have in the current times of COVID-19, right? As we all understand, COVID-19 has affected everyone on the planet. Directly or indirectly, businesses, governments, and organizations, there is no excuse there, right? So as a technology company, we thought about towards the end of February that, okay, what is that we can do? we can do a sophisticated technology to build our smart city technology, which we actually talked about in the previous seminar, right, with Doug. Then we just gone back to reality, actually thought about, what is that we can really do about this environment? Because there is lots of issues going on with people talking about their issues, sentiments about their problems facing with COVID-19 and beyond. And then what we thought really is about, okay, can we use technology, what we're already working on in AI, which is using natural language processing, NLP, one of the area where you can look at your online media or maybe online text data, like social media data, and to give valuable insights. So that at least, governments can able to make decisions about what are the citizens' problems. Are they just talking about health issues at COVID, or they could be talking about emotional issues like Ipeleng said. And there could be many areas people are talking about. It's not just related to everyone is affected with COVID-19, but there are indirect, problems, right? Like people, childcare, mental care, obviously people being at home, not being happy, doing work, and also looking after children. There are many things happens. And these issues will be surfaced in social media like Twitter, Facebook, and these channels. But who will actually have a time to go through all of this to understand the millions of feeds happening every day? So this is where we've just developed something called Alive Co, really to help give that valuable decisions and insights about the data, so that institutions or organizations can actually do one thing better, which is actually making the citizens' lives better, understanding their issues and sentiments, as well as if you're an organization serving your customers is better, and also address the issues about core problems what they're talking about, right? So basically this is what is really important at this time. And also I'm sure this will maybe continue for the rest of the year or whatever it is, because it's not reality, right? It's not going back to normal. And so that's kind of my thought on that. I'll just very quickly share a quick snapshot of how it looks like, if I can. Okay, good. Let me share my screen quickly. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So, but what effectively is that we develop something, as there is a lot of information outside available, for everyone. Just that could be any topic or any institution about. We had been having COVID-19 for some time. Last week we had this crisis in America about this Black Lives Matter, right? Because obviously it's been a big issue happening. Obviously, people talking about it. So obviously you can look at topics like this. An example here, when I look at COVID-19, this is what we have developed in AI. You can look at the people sentiments coming across from different countries, like from US and UK. There are a lot of people talking about it, and real information about what are the risk patterns, what are what's happening in different news channels, and also kind of looking at all these articles, like from many channels, like all the way from Bloomberg's, Reuters to the local blog posts and everything, and as well as from Twitter as well, like tweets, so that people can able to look at what are the real people's problems. So at least they can able to look at that information. So an example, if I can search about things like Black Lives Matter, which is actually a key topic of interest now, right? So you can actually see that also coming in, and you can search about Trump. It's just about helping organizations as well as for individuals to look at the core problems. And also banking detail here, we've been tracking the 5 biggest banks in the UK, and obviously all are kind of very neutral sentiment. As you can see, none of the banks, because of the issues, people trying to reach out to them, many issues, because obviously they don't have staff to cover the day-to-day monitoring. And there is an opportunity for any institutions, financial, big or small, to actually look at this information and look at what are the key problems, so that I can able to address the loans which governments are actually talking in the UK. Let's address the issue, let's address the credit card issues, maybe let's address mortgages. If you give those kind of problems realistically to them, they can able to address and make the customer service better. These are some of the fundamental problems we are actually addressing with the technology. And obviously yeah, so that's just my take on it. Of course, happy to take some further questions later. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for this opportunity.
Oh, really appreciate it, Raj. Thank you so much. So So going back, Nazri, to kind of some of the fundamental questions then that fall out of this conversation. One of them certainly is, you're an SME somewhere in the world. You've got things to deal with, lots of things to deal with. Where does somebody start? What would your recommendation be, given all these technology tools that are available? How does a business owner deal with what's going on, kind of a next step?
Okay, Doug, I will take a shot at this. What the panelists have shared essentially provides us with very, very good strategies or ideas for implementing or designing certain strategies, right? So what we've heard from Raj is the ability to sense the sentiment, the developments, what's trending in different parts of the world. Polling talks about, okay, before you do anything, let's know the end game first. What is the end game that you achieve? Ipeleng talks about the all-roundedness of what an entrepreneur must do, and there's no one size fits all, right? And of course, Femi talks about bankability and having that little coffer standing by to do any form of trade, cross-border trade and cross-border financing is still critical. So we can't always ignore the banking route altogether. And of course, the banks have their own challenges and all that. So where do we start from here? Back to your question, is that number one, before, as I mentioned, before any scaling could take place, right, one should actually incorporate some of the ideas provided by the panelists, that is to know the end game and to look at the current state of mind and the current state of business that you are in. So without that initial health check, it's like going to a doctor, right? You've got to know what is the diagnosis and specific diagnosis in terms of granularity. It's not about touching the heart and feel that, okay, cash flow is a problem, full stop. It's just the symptoms of it. But underneath all this, as what Ipeleng would have said, right? You have to re-engineer and redo the way you do business. I mean, the old way of doing business is totally redundant, almost across all sectors. It affects us badly, right? So we have to basically, understand how to improve the financials, improve the business strategies, and understand what are the leadership traits. So that starting point, can I have the slide on the strategies, please? Thanks. So basically, we need to know what is the strategies that are in place, that big companies did it successfully, and how can we localize it to the local micro, small, medium setting. So when we look at this 12, where do we start? For you to adopt any of this, like a like a game show, you just pick on you don't do that, right? So what you need to do is basically understand first, where do you stand? What are resources that you have? What is your end game? How fast do you want to grow? How fast do you want to survive, right? How long can you survive the cycle based on the 3 scenarios? So the first step is always been about diagnosis, right? The second part then would be through addressing those gaps first before you can actually go into a new line of business or new vertical. There's no shortcut to all this restructuring work. Restructuring is a very serious, major undertaking. It takes about 3 to 8 months in the short term, basically to get yourself out of the rut and go into survival mode. So survival mode is between 3 to 8 months, right? And basically, if you can survive that, then whatever plans you put into the next level, which is the growth, the thriving part, then becomes critical. Then you can talk about the 12 strategies. That's why when we see many industries, many companies from many industries suffer financially, right? It's not about borrowing more money. It's not about injecting capital, but it's what one of the panelists say, what is the end game you want to do? Do you go horizontal? How many markets you want to cover? What is your resources that you are going to use or secure based on the new capital that you bring in? So to me, the initial step must always be the health check, right? Before you do anything else. And after you pass the health check, address the 20% that affects 80% of the time. So that would include your debt levels, that would include your debt stroke gearing, right? That look into your cost, that looks into your platforms of reaching to customers, that looks at how you handle your customers with your lifeline. And of course, you don't forget your employees, right? Who are actually helping you to lift up the burden or support the burden they are currently facing. So it's a little bit of pain, right, that all of us have to go through. But like I said, make no mistakes, it could take between 3 to 8 months just to be on survival mode before you can go on to the next level. Over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Nazri. Continuing that thought process, right now there's at least 3 types of SMEs out there. Ones that have been devastated. There's seems to be no hope, and they must change. There's another group that is extremely successful. They happen to be in the right spot, or with a little bit of a tweak, they're in a great spot. And then there's people in the middle. So kind of staying on this topic of what should an SME do, Olufemi, Ling, Ipeleng, or Raj, do any of you also have some comments, and what are you seeing out there? Are there some case studies that you've seen where a company in one of those 3 categories has been very impressive to you that might be a good role model for somebody who's watching today?
Okay, if I may quickly, Femi here, if I may quickly jump in. I think Nazri has actually hit the right button by saying that we need to actually examine the health. Whatever stage you have, either you're being successful or whatever it is, it's important to be able to gauge the stage you have and actually understand what your position is. It's at that point that you can then know the right strategies. If you're struggling, definitely it's about. So you need to look at your cost, how you're going to cut your costs. You need to look at how you're going to continue to support your clients, how you're going to continue to deploy your services and products. You need to look at that strategy. It's about survival. However, if you're on the lucky side and you're flourishing, then you need to get a bit more data-driven. You need to get a bit more data-aware. Gather more information as regards what is driving your business. What are the things that you're doing well that is enabling that growth? Is it about the current situation? Is it that you're just on the lucky end of the divide, or rather that you're doing something right? So once you get out this information, that means you're much better data aware, and then you can now leverage even on this data to even grow further. So you grow from being data aware to being data driven, and I can leverage on some of the business intelligence solutions to actually grow over time and probably even become one of the unicorns, just like Nazri explained on the earlier presentation. So that's what I think from my end. The important thing really is actually to do a diagnosis. Find out where you are, whatever stage you are, be clear about it, and then look at your operations, look at the workflow, look at where you're not doing well, if you're having to struggle, and then know what you need to do to actually improve on that. And if you're doing well, get the information, gather the data, analyze it, interpret it, be able to determine the factors that are responsible for that growth, and then be able to actually capitalize on that and do even better. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you, Femi. Ling, relative to what Femi mentions, certainly understanding where you are today and providing some outlook of what might be happening is very important. It sounds like you've worked with some people that are making a shift, pivoting their business. And so what are some of the things that you're seeing that are helpful to think about for companies that do need to make a shift? They've done the analysis, we're in trouble. So now what do you do?
Okay, I like what Ipeleng has said just now. SME don't hesitate, just have to be brave and try out new things. For example, I have a client that has been with me, and they are doing wholesale of a local brand in Malaysia for shoes, sports shoes supply. And they always supply to a wholesale industry and all that. For years, I've been trying to convince this client to come on board to try on e-commerce, and he never did. Until today, he said he regretted for not taking my advice to look at e-commerce and how he can put his product online for sale. So today he come back to me and asked me, I need to change now. What is the next step I must do? So I think it's very important message for SME. Never ignore the the power of using technology to bring to your business, to reach out to a bigger market out there. I think that is very, very important. And it's never too early or too late to embark on technology. Yeah, because we are always scarce of resources for SMEs. Yes.
No question. So that your guidance around it's never too late. You know, it's never too late until it's too late, right? And we know, some of us know that feeling very, very well. So Ipeleng,
Yes.
how about you? What are you seeing out there in terms of companies that are succeeding and are making some good shifts in terms of what they're doing? Are you seeing some things there in South Africa?
Yes, we're seeing very interesting things, Doug. You know, there are a few things that are obviously going through the minds of SMMEs right now, because you either shift your business model, or you either sustain your business and restore, or you either shape a whole new business altogether, or you look at restructuring your business altogether. And as Nazri said, to restructure obviously takes quite a bit of time. Now, the key thing is, because we're talking about reimagining the new norm, what's important is really to also not shy away from repurposing your business. We've begun to see some of the factories, for an example, that decided to use their factories from what they predominantly, for instance, some of the printers, they started using their factories to now repurpose and produce PPE, essential goods. And that's being creative. You are using already what you have, but you are just repurposing. So again, it takes thinking outside the box. And then we are beginning to see those who are in a plastic business, for instance, they are using their material, for instance, to produce the shields that the doctors use, and some of the plastic things for the counters to protect people who are at the tellers. And what you're also beginning to see, you're beginning to see medical doctors who also think outside the box, and they shift away from being, you know, typical medical doctors, and they're now getting into business where, because they understand the science and understand health, they're now also being innovative in how they can use their brains to create businesses out of, because some of them you'll find that the surgeries are not as productive anymore, because people are no longer traveling around because of the different lockdown measures that have been introduced. So you're beginning to see people embracing that, the new norm, and also new ways of thinking. So we are beginning to see quite a bit. And then also technology. I mean, I think COVID has sort of forced, in South Africa, it has been interesting, and I think Nazri will attest to this. We've been talking to a couple of organizations around digitalizing. It was a slow process, but COVID has forced everyone to, you know, shift overnight. So now it's for them to probably build on that over and above what COVID has brought about. So I think, as much as COVID has been very sad and a setback, there lies an opportunity. And I think people who are going to survive and who are going to be resilient are those who embrace change, because if you embrace change, you'll survive. But most importantly, just be happy to really think outside the box, and don't shy away from learning a new skill. Some of the people are even enrolling for online education, like short-term diplomas in, for instance, technologies in renewable energies. So you are beginning to see new energies and people being very enthusiastic, looking towards the future, because otherwise we can't give up, I guess. We have to keep going.
Absolutely. I do want to make a note that the normal Globinar for Global Chamber is 60 minutes. And so we're going to go a little bit over today, probably somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes over based on the questions that you have. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we're definitely going to be finished within 30 minutes. And we do have some more questions to cover. And this is too great of a panel to let off the hook, if you will. We really want to hear from you. So Raj, what Ipeleng mentions there, it's interesting that I think you spoke last at Global Chamber. We were talking about disruptive technologies, and it was just a word, it seems, just 6 months ago. And certainly many companies were interested in it and moving forward with it. But what Ipeleng mentions is now it becomes a necessity for so many businesses. And so what are you seeing out there? Are people kind of taking this moment to really kind of come to grips with the reality and making these changes that are probably should have been done a while back, but now are a necessity? What are you watching?
Definitely, I think for sure. I think our co-speakers, I think, really and Femi, for sure. And just one thing for sure you mentioned is about necessity definitely drives the need, right? An example, we all been at home, and we can be productive. Example, so obviously it doesn't need to be going to offices and actually spending time on unproductive stuff like that. But I think one thing I wanted to definitely leave out is that the disruptive technologies like AI and blockchain, or these technologies are not in the hands of the big players like Amazon, Google, and Apple. Every company, small or big, can able to utilize these technologies, because why I say is that every customer, an example, organization have data, and they have a main purpose is serving customers better, right? How do you know your customers? What is your customer's interest? And this kind of things you can able to analyze it. Obviously, if it's small data in Excel, but if the data volume is too big, that's where you can use technologies like AI, an example, to understand that better with faster speed. And then, of course, the humans always have to be in control. We're not actually talking the automated machines here to make decisions, right? You always have the technology like AI and analytics to enable human decisions quicker. And also this timing is really right, actually, because we don't have many people working, the normal hours, normal timing, whatever it is, right? So this is where the technology can enable to address some of the monotonous kind of irregular tasks, to enable the human intelligence and actually make them decisions better at the end to serve customers better. And of course, this is actually given as a good opportunity, right? There's no Ling has mentioned that people are talking about e-commerce. People are talking about knowing their customers better, understanding their problems better, so that they can understand the brand, and eventually they'll survive. But I think the technology can definitely be an enabler at this time, and like virtual meetings like Zoom, and we've been talking, and like Go Meet Me or any other technologies, I think it's still enabling us to do the work, right? So it's not, we're not stopping, but at least you can prioritize your time and actually prioritize your actions. And Ipeleng mentioned, are defined within the organization and also with your partners. I think that technology can next be the enabler. So if you don't have the foundation right with the people, communications, and collaboration, I think whatever the best strategy you can put may not survive for long. That's my view on that.
That makes sense. Couple more questions that we have. One is regarding the banks. Certainly, one of the things that we're seeing is that there's probably three things that they're very busy with. One is they're trying to do the loan programs. So many countries have these loan programs, and so they're kind of heads down working on that. They're also got clients of the bank that are losing big money, and so they have to help those people. And then there's people who are trying to ramp up, and so they need money. And what are you seeing around the world relative to the banks, and how supportive or lack of support, given that they're stretched in every direction for the types of growth and unicorn type companies that we want to be? How do we get the bank's attention given how they're stretched? And are you seeing that same thing around the world? Is that what you're seeing, Nazri, in Singapore as well, and in Asia, where the banks are like stretched beyond belief?
In certain jurisdictions like Singapore and Malaysia, what we've seen is the government has stepped in to actually provide some form of relief to existing borrowers. And for new borrowers, they try to provide a guarantee of up to 80% of the loan exposure to SMEs that are hard hit by the crisis, right? And like I said, banking solution can only be effective if the SMEs have that viable strategy to grow. And there were many examples given by the panelists on that. As well as the fact that the banks are not going to be hard on them if they start missing their payments based on one of the three scenarios that could happen, on the COVID scenarios you mentioned earlier. So that would really throw their equations out of whack, right? And the idea of cash flow suddenly become more, more delayed, for example, to make the payments on time. And of course, we need the government support for those who are exposed to existing loan applications or existing loan lines, and if without the support, they will go bust, right? That is the mindset. That is the existing trend. These are existing policies, or rather newly crafted policies that are in place to support such businesses from going down under, by getting a lifeline, not just big corporations like airlines and whatnot, but also a few 100,000 SMEs that are benefiting from this, from 150 to 250,000 SMEs we're looking at. So, well, banking is really one of the option, and banks are of course, well capitalized generally in Asia. However, they are expected to have some pressure in terms of collections, collectability, that is only mitigated by the government with all the schemes, right? So without everybody has to work together. In short, there's no solitary strategy that could exist on a standalone basis and still succeed. So when you pose this question, it's more of an ecosystem question that has to have the various stakeholders coming together and bring each company, big, medium size or small or large, right, to the next level. That I feel is necessary. A tripartite, interconnected strategy integrated strategy is very important to survive. Yeah.
Okay. Some of the tools that you're using or that you have are helpful for that, right? In terms of helping the banks get to the next level. So that's encouraging. One more question while we've got you, Nazri. You are a serial entrepreneur. You've shifted many times. I remember when we met, you had a product that to me seemed a little bit too complicated for the US market, and that was largely my feedback, and you went back and you made it way better. So what are some of the things that you do to rethink where you are? You know, the reality, the financial reality sometimes can be almost a debilitator, right? It's like, oh my God, I've got to pay this, I've got to do that. So how does an owner of a business stay in a creative zone at a time when there's so much pressure?
It's directed to me, right, Doug?
You've probably never been under that kind of a pressure, so it might be hard, but you probably know some people who've been under pressure. So how do we stay creative? How do we stay viable so that we can keep our business around?
Yeah, I think what we did before was that we put technology in front as a solution to everything, right? But business owners want to know the outcome, the end game, right? And think of technology as an enabler. So we ourselves pivot and rebrand or redesign our business model to have the outcome in mind first. So if an SME wants to do valuation of the business, right, then we come out with a technology that can determine the valuation of the business versus competitors, versus comparable, versus the industries, versus their standalone financials, and then project forward. So with a click of a button and, after injecting some information, you'll get the baseline of evaluation, base case, best case, worst case scenario. Use that report, meet investors, try to negotiate the fair deal. So valuation is an art and a science at the same time. So, but at least you know what's the minimum maximum boundary, right? And when we talk about mergers and acquisitions, when we talk about due diligence, right? So there's so much information floating around. So the problem statement must be made clear. You know, technology must be able to solve a specific pain point that is unique to that particular industry or organization. So it's data, too much data, too little data, too complicated data, right? And you need the information to be processed in such a way that you can make a decision fast. So that's where technology comes in. So what we did was to streamline the communication. What we did was to assure business owners that their pain point could be solved by technology. Okay, and this is the end result, the potential scenarios and potential outcome, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so these are the potential outcomes that you can achieve with the 5, 10 steps that are laid out by the system for you. So for us, that messaging that narrative was very important to bring across to the stakeholders. Whether you're SME, whether you're a bank, whether you're government, people need information to make more informed decisions. Right, to fire, to hire, to grow, to contract, to scale down, to scale up, and to develop human capital. So as information gets more and more rampant, well, you can't do it manually anymore. Like what Raj said, right? You can't just rely on Word document or Excel and try to do some analysis out of it manually, especially when the volume gets higher and higher. So even right now, Doug, we have consultants coming to us in Asia, right? Wanting to get help because suddenly the government gives them a contract to help 150,000 SMEs. And you are a 5-man team, 10-man team, and probably have another 20 to 30 consultants. Even if you have 30 consultants, how can you help 150,000 SMEs under 6 months? How do you do that? Right? Yeah. So we work with consultants, advisors, government agencies responsible for SME development, for example, to get over all these hurdles. So information is one, manual approach is second, and complicated, what you call bespoke solutions that are needed for each and every SME that comes to them is the third. These are the pull factors for even consultants or advisors to adopt AI. Otherwise, a 30-man team, how are you going to solve 150,000 SMEs other than to training or group workshops? But that would not be something that the SMEs want. What they want is a bespoke, customized, personalized attention solution. So AI does not replace the consultant, but it helps the consultants augment their skills and abilities and communication strategies and in doing intervention work for them. Thanks, Doug.
Great, thank you. Continuing that digitalization theme, which is really inherent in what we're talking about today, there's a question for the panel, and I'd like to open it up to anybody who'd like to answer that or follow up with the previous question. The new question is, what small practical steps in digitalization are model examples that proactive SMEs can do to position themselves as disruptive? How do these digitization steps help secure them new customers, distribution channels, and impact within this current environment that we're in? So are there some examples that any of you can cite? And please feel free to go ahead.
If I may attempt this this question, I think it's Raj here. Definitely, I think if you want to be disruptive, I think in this current environment, I would say practical steps in digitalization is, as many of our speakers mentioned, that most of them are using legacy systems like manual spreadsheets or documents, whatever it is. I think get them to a standardized platform so that at least in this current environment, people at least have access to it. Let's get the your customers' data, your payments, whatever it is. But in the context of once you get there, right, I think the next step is about how can you practically take next steps about understanding your core issues, right? So identifying is it serving customers, or maybe is it core employment issues, employee issues you have. I think it could be anything for every business. Right? I think you need to, as a founder or maybe CEO or managing director, you need to address those issues and then put a right team. I think it is a team's exercise first before talking about the technology, right? And I would say after that, then probably you can able to look at some innovative technologies like AI or advanced analytics to actually help your job better. And then probably once you have your unique positioning, what is the product or service you're offering, then actually you can expand your channels about using some very affordable mechanisms. Now, I think most of the companies are now offering a lot of affordable structures for e-commerce and different platforms. You can start look at that. I think these are some of the practical steps I would.
Got it.
That whatever revenue you're trying to get from the customers right now, always looking at a 1/3 formula. Like an example, if you're getting £100 or $100, try to get a $30 or $35 an example. Keep that as that will be eventually your profit, right? So I think the rest of the money would be gone to your profit, taxes, maybe employee costs. I think always keep the simple principles in mind how you want to run it in this current cash flow situation as many are going through, so that at least you can sustain for the 6 to 12 months or whatever that is. And that is my views on it. Feel free to add.
Okay. Any other comments about that? And if not, I'll move on to the next question. The next question from the audience and the panelists, if we don't catch you, just answer any question that's been passed at any time. The new question is, the questioners would greatly appreciate, Nazri, if you or someone could explain the situational analysis chart that was projected as one of the screens, black, orange, green, red in color. It was a fairly complicated chart, and maybe you could explain more about that and its application to what we're talking about now.
Well, the purpose of the color is, ironically, is to simplify the intensity or the situation faced by a company, right? Black means solid company or solid situation. Green means good. Orange means average. Red means severe or poor. Okay, because the forum is a very short forum for us to explain the outcome and the output rather than the methodology. So that particular coloring things that you see there is basically a scenario analysis. Horizontally will be like if sales drop by 5, 10, 30, 50% and cost increase by 5, 10, 30%, what will happen to your bottom line? So for a company that's robust, it will have a lot of blacks and greens appearing in the graphs. But if you are very, very vulnerable to economic shocks or balance sheet duress, then you have more reds and ambers, or what you call orange, across all the scenarios that that comes upon the company. And this can be done at the industry level, at the country level, at a portfolio level, and so on and so forth. So basically, that is one of the more complicated charts, admittedly, when it comes to predicting scenarios when certain variables change, i.e. sales, cash flow, liabilities, costs, assets, such as cash, right? And as a result, what will be the impact on the bottom line? And what the machine does is it basically interprets all this automatically and starts listing out what is the diagnosis, and then move into action plan, which is on the right side. For those who wants to know more, please don't hesitate to write to us, and we will be able to share real companies from the likes of Jack Ma and Elon Musk all the way down to a micro small enterprise on a no-name basis. We'll be happy to share with you some of these findings. In fact, we do a lot of studies on SMEs and MSMEs, and to see the impact that economic has on them. I think there's another question quickly, Doug, if I can address that part. I think Raj also may comment on this. I believe it's like examples of digitalization model, how to be disruptive, how to help them secure new customers, distribution channels, and so on. So very quickly on my side, basically, even for SMEs, right? Right now, your customers or customers whom you think would be your ideal purchasers of your products and services are most likely not there anymore. So with the new model that you are pushing, you got to restart and realign and reassess who your customer profile will be. So what guys like Raj and I do, basically we plow through millions of articles, millions of social media, millions of data that comes from the public sources, right? And we look at trends, we look at emerging trends, we look at sentiments, and we can nail down any form of profile of people, what people are happy, angry, fear, joy, right? And you put a product into the picture, let's say a drink, isotonic drink, right? Or a particular clothing or particular brand. You can basically test the impact of your marketing or your product by looking at either your product, your brand, or your competitor's product, your competitor's brand, as well as the industry. So whether it's a steel industry, whether it's a clothing industry, whether it's a pharmaceutical or basically beverages, right? You can basically track and do a market competitive scanning using AI. So there are two types of AI, weak AI and strong AI, right? Weak AI will just pull the information and profile, describe, and diagnose. But a powerful AI will be able to predict and prescribe and then monitor in steps on what you need to do. So this is an example of how AI is being used for market acquisition or customer acquisition. And same thing, if you know 7-Eleven is your distributor, or a particular hypermart is your distributor, or a particular clinic or hospital or university is your distributor of your FMCG goods, right? Fast moving consumer goods, then you want to know first, how strong are those channels? Are they winding down? Are they closing half of their stores in the next 6 months? Are they suffering? Because if they are, whatever products you have and whatever products you are trying to sell through that distribution, it will fall flat, basically. So combining both structured and unstructured data provide you with a very powerful solution, because you also have your P&L and balance sheet. So you got to match your P&L and balance sheet to the macro and external data, and such services can indeed be provided by guys like Raj, right? Put it together, you are able to get a very powerful AC Nielsen, or what you call a Euro Monitor or Gartner type of report meets McKinsey type of consulting, of course on a smaller scale for the small medium enterprise. So this is the kind of democratization of AI technology that is no longer just can be accessed by big and large companies, but it can be brought down to the micro, small enterprise level to do things like market research, market segmentation, customer acquisition, channel analysis, and then create the impact analysis on your P&L balance sheet, your forecast, and then based on your forecast, you can present a business plan. Based on your business plan, you can gain some funding either from the bank or from investors to channel money for this expansion plan that you have in the next 6 to 12 months. Right, so this is my point of view from the second question from the audience. Thank you.
Fantastic. No, and this is something you couldn't do 10 years ago, right? This was totally not available. So just in the last 10 years, these technologies have been evolving, and the last several years, amazingly so. We are coming to the end. We only have just a few minutes left. And so what I would ask each speaker, maybe for 30 or 60 seconds each, could you just kind of either summarize or make a point that you would like to make based on what we've talked about? And then we'll close the program down within the next few minutes. So maybe we start with Femi. Would you like to just say 30 to 60 seconds of a wrap up and anything else you'd like to say in closing? You might be on mute.
Thank you very much, Doug. Yeah.
You bet.
Okay. So what I'd like to just say is that well, COVID-19 has clearly catalyzed the process, the need for us to digitalize. We've slept on this for a while as SMEs, but no doubt about it, this has been accelerated by the current pandemic, and it's quite imperative that businesses must examine their operations and explore areas that needs to be transformed. They need to just deploy innovative ways of actually sourcing their inputs, reaching out to the market, serving their clients, and many more. You understand? Digitalization will ensure businesses remain competitive, and as it avails opportunities for them to grow and better resolve challenges. And just like to mention that for SMEs who are struggling right now, it's an opportunity for you to actually renegotiate your terms with your banks, with your lenders. You can also renegotiate terms and contracts with your vendors so that you can actually survive and then eventually stabilize and then map out your strategies for growth. Thank you once again for having me. Thank you, Doug.
Oh, our pleasure. I think it was, many people have probably said the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. And so you touched on that, and it's something I certainly agree with. Ling, would you like to close, please? Oh,
Thanks,
you might.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah. I think the world is ever changing. So for SME to stay in the game, you just have to be evolved and find what is the best way to scale up your business. Either you'll be in the game or you'll be chased out of the game. That's my take for the day. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, exactly right. Do something. Absolutely. I'm with you. Ipeleng, how about you? Would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Doug. I think for me, really, it's my encouragement, or rather my message to SMME is that just be bold, be realistic at the same time, and honesty, around the market that you operate in, what's doable and what's not doable, and just also following the different regulatory processes that could change in your environment and also your competitive. Because, for instance, in South Africa right now, we're still governed by the Disaster Management Act. And when you are governed by different acts, it means there are certain things that were applicable before COVID and are no longer applicable. So just be agile, go for it. And I think just don't be shy. I think just be brave, go for it. And as Pauline said, evolve. Otherwise you have to, it's really being just a matter of either you adapt or you die. So go for it. And I think you have to embrace change and let's just go for it. Yeah, that's it from me.
Be brave, don't be shy. I can't think of anybody braver than Raj. Raj, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Sure, I think I'll echo Ipeleng's view as well. Definitely do not fear, because at this moment, obviously COVID has kind of affected everyone, but actually it's just like, it's not the end. I think just do not fear, actually make practical steps and actually try to be better at your customers and also be better at your employees, and use the technology as an enabler. don't think technology is actually overtaking you. It's okay to take small steps. And, it doesn't need to be like, be a sophisticated technology. Make some practical steps in making the technology in this current world. And stay safe, and that's all I can say. And enjoy the summertime. At least the restrictions are coming out.
Great advice. And of course, everybody on this call, if you'd like to contact them, please let us know. If you can't find them in the Global Chamber directory, send an email to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll make sure that you get connected. Nazri, you're the last word. I saw you were typing some things in there in terms of some of your conclusions. So would you like to close?
Right. So my advice is just do a 360 check, like a car inspection. So don't assume that you know everything, because what we used to know is no longer relevant. There are too many dynamics externally and internally that we may be short-sighted to look at. Don't assume we know everything. So do a proper 360 check, and then look at the areas for intervention and follow the steps, yet remain adaptable and flexible, because things can change under those 3 scenarios we mentioned earlier. Then after that, then you can adopt smart tech and rely less on a labor-intensive model and move towards more digital-centric model. This is the new way forward that's going to be permanent. And all the best to those businesses that are already embarking on it. And for those who are still 50-50 or are not sure how to proceed, Global Chamber and us are more than happy to guide you through and connect with hundreds, if not thousands of people in the GC network with the right expertise and the right network who can provide you with the relevant expertise and solutions. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazri. Thank you all. You're amazing people, and really honored to have all of you speak today. Global Chamber does these Globinars very frequently. We have 25 to 30 events that we do every week to help members all around the world, everywhere in the world, be more successful, because we believe that by improving trade, improving business between countries, that we're making the world a better place and certainly enriching it, and that's a good thing. So thank you all for speaking today. We're actually coming together a week from now. We're going to be talking about valuing your business with AI drivers at a more detailed level. So join us then. Go to myfinb.com and learn more about what Nazri and his team do. Check out all of the people who spoke today. And of course, anytime, check out globalchamber.org, and we're happy to help as well. Thanks, everybody. You have a good rest of your Friday. Some of you, it's almost Saturday. So enjoy the Saturday. The rest of us, we're going to enjoy our Friday. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Doug.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Who is that? We have a young female entrepreneur.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That young person's probably got a business he or she's working on.
She's gonna scale and soar.
Gail, hey, high priority.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll conquer the world.
Wow, who's that? Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Comforts. I'm calling from Nigeria.
Comfort. It's a good name.
Great.
Thank you.
And that's your daughter, I assume, or your sister?
You can see me. I'm called Comforter on the platform right now.
Okay, but there was a little girl voice. Was it from you?
No, this is my own voice, not a little girl's voice. Maybe it was someone else.
Okay.
I'm not a little girl.
Oh, Nazri, you're in trouble.
All right.
This is Comforter.
Okay.
Very
So
tough.
it's like an international crowd, Doc.
Any man, woman, anything in between, every age is okay with starting a business. So we're happy to help. And our slogan at Global Chamber, be global and unstoppable. And so that's what we encourage you to do. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
Bye-bye.
You too, Mr. Doug.
Thank you very much. It was a good session. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.